How are your knife skills coming along since cooking together at hotel school? Would you describe them as well honed, or have they dulled a bit since the lockdown? You know, I think developing good cutting techniques is really worth your while. Since almost everything we do in the kitchen involves using one, being skillful with a knife helps us work with more precision and efficiency. And I'm sure it'll help you enjoy your cooking even more. And unlike the knives themselves, the more you practice your techniques, the better and sharper your skills get. Let's cut in for a closer look. Right, just a few pointers on knives before we get started. Ideally, you'd want to have two knives on hand, a paring knife and a chef's knife. The paring knife is about 3.5 inches, maybe 4 inches long. This one is ceramic, which is great. Advantage of ceramic blades is that they stay sharp for a long time. However, they are prone to breaking, so it's ceramic. If you drop them, they can break or chip, so just bear that in mind. Stainless steel blades, on the other hand, are tough and durable. Usually they won't break when you drop them, and you can sharpen them as you go, and they will get dull as you go. So you'll need to have some method for sharpening them, for instance, a steel and possibly something like a whetstone. Another advantage to the ceramic is that you don't need the steel and the whetstone. For the chef's knife, this is about a 6-inch knife, which you can do just about anything with. When you're looking for your knife, make sure that you've got something that feels comfortable to hold, and that this part of the blade, which is called the tang, is thick enough because when you're cutting on the board, the tang is going to save you from wrapping your knuckles as you're chopping. And the best thing to do is just try the knife out before you buy it if you can, and make sure that it feels good and that it's keeping your knuckles protected as you're cutting and slicing. Okay, so a couple blades and you're in business. I did a quick price check on blades, and what did I find? Yeah, so 2 places that are worth trying for blades. If you have a Tesco's, a large Tesco store, I've seen a knife set. It was a paring knife and a chef's knife. I think there was a third knife in there for about £7. Otherwise, Amazon is a good way to go, and I saw a paring knife for about £6 or £7 and a chef's knife for about the same price. So you could get both for under 20 pounds. Okay, let's start with some lovely vegetables here. We've got some carrots, garlic, onion, celery, and some peppers. Also, essentially the building blocks of flavor for European continental cuisine. In fact, the French call these les légumes aromatiques, the aromatic vegetables, and it's the foundation of flavor for so much of cooking in the Western tradition. Let's start with an onion. My aim here is to do a quick rough chop like you'd do for a stew or a roast, and then follow it with a finer mince that you might use for a tomato sauce or curry. A little bit about hand shapes. I'm sure you remember these from class before, but there's basically 2 shapes of the hand that you want to maintain when you're cutting the veg on the board, and that's the so-called bridge and the claw. And it's really worth exaggerating these and focusing on these 2 shapes as you're cutting. It will help you minimize cutting yourself in the process, and also it's a good foundation for working efficiently. Okay, so I want to cut this onion down, and I'm going to keep the root pretty intact because it's going to help me a little bit later on. Take both ends off here, and then slice down the middle. Just take the paper off. Okay, so let's go with a large large dice for the onion, and then a smaller dice as well. So for the larger one, basically, again, I'm working with the claw here on the left hand and cutting into 4 pieces. And the tip I want to give you here is to work comfortably, take your time. Over time, you'll find that you speed up naturally, but not a good idea to run in there and try to put too much pressure on yourself for time, and just allow that to happen naturally. So claw holding the onion. Okay, and there's a nice rough cut if you're doing a roast where a large chunky size perhaps is needed. My goal now is to cut the other half of the onion down in as few strokes as possible. You can see I've got the root end still intact, and it's really helpful because it'll help keep the onion together as I'm cutting it. Now what I want to do is to slice into the onion and letting the claw guide the knife, and then switching into the bridge naturally as I need to hold the onion in place. And then it's simply a matter of, okay, now as the onion gets a little bit slippery as you're going along here, again, just work comfortably. Turn the onion over. You can see how the root end is keeping the onion together. Okay, and the bits that I don't use here, I can put into a plastic bag, into the freezer, and then use that for making stock sometimes. First thing, to get the clove out of the head of garlic, you've got the root end, you've got this sort of stem bit. If you put the stem like this on the board and give a good push with your fist, it goes flying sometimes, it's the way it is, but it separates the cloves really well, really easily. Now, my goal is going to be to get the paper off of this as quickly as possible. First step is to take the stem end or the root end and trim that off, because you don't want to end that up in you don't want that to end up in the final product. And sometimes the paper can really be stubborn, so if you use a knife here and carefully give it a whack, and the paper comes off really easily. Okay. Also helps in breaking the garlic down, and that's ultimately what we want to do. Now here's a little tip. I sprinkle a bit of salt onto the garlic, and this will cause the garlic to sweat a bit and release some liquid, and this is great because it will keep it from getting stuck onto the blade itself. Okay, now to break this down even further, that should do. You could then slice this way, or bring the garlic to the edge of the board and with a kind of flattening motion with the blade, grind the garlic into the board, and you can make a paste this way. You can switch back to cutting, so there goes the claw. Start out slow and let yourself naturally speed up as you go along. And you'll see that the garlic is not sticking too much to the knife, which is great. And there you go. Right, so carrots are next on the menu, and my aim for these is just to cut them down into sticks, and then the sticks into dice. So I've got a couple of options there. I could keep the sticks for crudité or dice if I'm going to be doing some sautéing. And we'll also look at how to do a julienne, and then to cut the julienne into an even finer, tiny dice called a brunoise. Right, first things first. Now, again, make sure that you're working comfortably. So get situated, and first of all, cut your carrot down into manageable sizes. Just trim the ends off. Okay. These I can toss, or again, I could put them into a plastic bag with the onion and freeze them and use them for stock. Okay, so carrot sticks. Now, if it's rocking around a little bit, just make sure you're working with a flat end on the carrot. Do a rather thick slice. Okay, and then each slice into sticks or batons. Right? So great for a crudité. And you can keep going if you need a dice, if you're going to be sautéing the vegetables, for instance. So again, working with the claw. And I'm using this middle finger to make contact with the blade and to guide as I cut. As you go along, you can speed up naturally, but don't rush yourself in the beginning. Okay, and there's your dice, pretty quick. Let's try doing a julienne. So for the julienne, just trim my carrot down here a little bit. And this time I'm going to take very fine, very thin slices. And then the thin slices I can stack on top of each other. And again, using this middle finger on the claw, I'm guiding the placement of the knife as I cut down. Okay, and in some recipes, some cooking, you'll want what's known as a brunoise, so it's just a tiny, tiny cube of the carrots, and I could just cut those. And again, it's the claw that's guiding the knife. So I'm making precise cuts, and the shape of the hand is minimizing the chance that I'm going to nick into the flesh as I'm cutting. And there's a nice brunoise. Really nice if you're doing a consommé or a clear soup and you want just a little bit of decoration. For the celery, cut into manageable pieces. Into sticks or batons, and then the baton into dice. Yeah. And if you want a brunoise, of course, just thinner slices. So more of a julienne. And then the julienne into brunoise. Okay, and for bonus, let's finish off with a little bit of fine cuts for some decoration. So for example, you've got some lovely peppers here. And let's say my goal is just to garnish the top of a sauce or a salsa or some sour cream with a bit of color. So I'm going to take off just a bit of the pepper here. Same with the red. And then do a fine julienne on the pepper. Again, my claw is in the usual position and guiding the knife as I slice through. And same with the green. Okay. And then I can slice the julienne into what's known as a brunoise, or kind of a confetti, tiny. And similarly with the red. So you've got a lovely fine dice there, and you can mix them together as well for a really nice bit of color, kind of a panache of color as a garnish, and pretty quick to prepare. The final cut I'm going to show you is called a chiffonade, and it's really helpful with leafy herbs and lettuce for doing a bit of decoration. And right, so for example, let's say you want to garnish soup or even a pasta dish, and maybe it's a very fine sauce that you've done, or a fine shape of pasta, so you want a fine cut of garnish as well. So if you take your leaves of basil, for instance, and just lay them one on top of the other, it smells so good. And then roll them up really tightly. And then slice really finely. And you've got a lovely shape to garnish a sauce or soup or even a fruit salad. Really lovely. You can also do this with lettuce leaves, to do a chiffonade of lettuce to garnish a soup. So take some nice, beautifully colored leaves of lettuce, roll it up like a cigar. And again, just beautiful color and shape, very fresh to garnish a soup or a sauce. Really lovely. I hope you found that useful. We covered a lot of ground together, but really there are only two basic hand positions and a few essential cutting methods, and these just repeat over and again. It's not a huge amount to remember, though there's plenty to practice. So stick with it, and your speed, precision, and ease will naturally increase over time. Thanks. I hope you enjoy some great food and cooking this week.